right. There you go.
Okay, all right. You want to talk Matthew Toe at 62 points or Dan Hollins at 87 points?
Welcome to the Rugby Rant podcast show, your premier North American rugby podcast. Growing rugby, one fan at a time.
And welcome, Rugby Rant fans. I'm the big guy, Scott Ferrara. That's Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. And today, joining us, I don't know, he might lead him and Mikey Parazzini and probably Alex Carlson are close to being like the most guys, the most appearances on the Rugby Rant. We got TJ Olsen in the Bonus Point podcast. TJ, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, good fellas. Thank you for letting me jump on again. It's been a minute, but I am relishing every moment I get an opportunity to jump on this podcast. And I told you guys before off air, I just got back from the World Cup. I've been dealing with some jet lag.
He's going to rub it in our face again.
Yeah, and you guys
prior to going, he's going to rub it just for extra measure.
Yeah, you guys are telling me just get over it. You got to spend 3 weeks in France, so that all comes with the territory.
I mean, he definitely had a European holiday. I mean, I'm lucky if I got to spend 3 days with my missus. Is like,
hey, yeah, no, I'm not.
He's complaining about jet lag. Meanwhile, he was enjoying wine and cheese.
I was gonna say his blood alcohol content and his gout are really kicking in right now.
Hey, yeah, no, 100% agree with that. It's not looking pretty good, but yeah, getting back on the bandwagon now with the healthy stuff. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome. And real quick, guys, it's that first segment we all know and love. It's Around the Pitch.
When we pick up the ball, we also pick up a legacy. A legacy that stretches beyond your current team. A legacy built on the backs of those who came before you with hard work. And for those who will come after you, we promise it won't be easy. But we'll be there, supporting you on and off the field.
All right, so first we're going to set up TJ. TJ, what do you got for Around the Pitch this week?
So we've got the WPL. They have just finished their season. Their inaugural season has ended, and the Grey Wolves and the All Blues had a tremendous finals match that went on to the wire. The Grey Wolves ended up taking the win 29-24 against the All Blues, but really credit to the All Blues in my, I guess, home state of California, as you call it, that they had pulled out a good performance. Grey Wolves too good.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, my girls at the New York Rugby Club couldn't make it. Got bounced out early. I was very upset, but it was a great match. Got to watch it on YouTube. So, looking forward to the next. Now it's an Eagles section, an international window for the Eagles, the women Eagles. And then, we're going to start up with an MLR season and then back to a WPL season right after that. So, Rob, I heard you got something similar. We're sticking with the WPL here?
Yeah, absolutely. Since TJ's coming on, he's a big promoter of women's rugby. Of course, he coaches a lot of women's rugby and is always a big fan and likes to push it. So I thought, what better opportunity to talk about the Heart of the WPL Award, named after Kathy Flores. Several nominees: Bridget DeSantis, Lynn Clyer, T. Granby, KJ Johnson. Love KJ. Wendy Young from the Scrum Half Connection has been a guest on this show before as her own pod. Love Wendy's work. We had Gio Cruz, and the winner of the 2023 Heart of the WPL Award goes to Twin City Amazons, Allie Gilberg. So we'd like to congratulate her, Director of Marketing. You can't have too good of Director of Marketing for rugby in the United States. You need somebody that does a heck of a job there, and she does. So congratulations to Allie. Well deserved. Second year it was initiated. We love to see it continue. Named after one of the true ladies that has promoted the sport for so many years, who unfortunately passed, Kathy Flores. She was a rock of women's rugby in the United States.
Absolutely. Real quick, shout out to our girl, Wendy Young. Check her out at Your Scrum Half Connection on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. She does, what does she do? The 30 seconds of women's rugby in a week. It's a really good segment when you can catch her doing those. I try and repost them as much as I can because she really goes in depth with just that 30 seconds and kind of gives you the news of the week for women's rugby. So actually, I'm breaking out an MLR, a little bit of MLR stuff. Our buddy Marcel Brocchi tweeted, "Hey, at USMLR, when are we getting confirmation that players are allowed to choose their playing numbers for the upcoming season? Question mark. Hearing we're close to a green light on this. So amped." And there was tons of comments. We're not gonna talk about it here, fellas. It's not our topic for today. That will be our topic for episode 155 next week. And I just want to say this, my buddy Dan Brown, a Queens Rugby legend, one of the founders of the Queens Rugby Club, asked Marcel, are we going to have to change the name of the number 8 then? Obviously, he was joking, a little banter. Marcel said, good point. And then kind of sarcastically said, when the 8 is substituted, does the person now playing there have to take the original jersey of that position? And Marcel, I love you, but I think you've been playing high-level rugby way too long, because yes, you do in Division 4 where the big guy plays, because there's only 17 total kits.
D3,
so,
D4.
Yeah, we don't. After the first hooker sub and the first prop sub, we have run out of kits. So we are wearing sweaty kits, even though we're a substitute. So Marcel,
it doesn't matter if it's got blood on it. You gotta put that jersey on. You gotta run out, man.
I will tell you guys a great story. University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. We go up to Lyndonville, Vermont, to play in what's called the Snow Bowl every year. There's about 25 guys in 2 hotel rooms. Yeah, it's freezing. And we have a bit of a drink up the day before the night before one of the first day. My buddy went to use the bathroom. The next day, everybody wakes up a little groggy. Time to get going. We're gonna go to the field. I grabbed the jerseys. I'm like, why? The jersey's wet. You guessed it. He went to the bathroom on the jerseys, nice white jerseys that we had to play in for 2 days. About 10 matches in pea-soaked jerseys. Thank you, Rudy.
I thought playing in jerseys that haven't been washed is bad. Playing in jerseys that are soaked in someone else's urine, that takes courage. Oh man, yeah, jeez.
Absolutely,
in the United States.
Gotta love the D4 rugby, baby. I mean, not high level whatsoever. But speaking of high level rugby, the topic we have for today's episode is actually one that TJ brought to us and said he wanted to talk about and wanted to bring it on the rant. And it's something that me, Rob, and Ty have been talking about throughout this Rugby World Cup cycle here. And that is the future of Rugby World Cups and the proposed wild card system that they're looking to do. And they're looking to, I guess, try and start it in 2027 when the Rugby World Cup will be in Australia, eventually to move to the US in 2031 when they come here. And what that would entail is it would be extra teams coming out of the group stage. And then the number 1 team in that group would get a bye week, pretty similar to what we have in the NFL right now. So that way you're adding that extra team, the extra couple of teams into play. The first team gets an extra week of rest because they've earned it, because they've done so well in group play, what have you. And is that a plus? Is that a negative? We're going to talk about that. But first, we have some words from our lovely sponsors, baby.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers. It is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and easily accessible for many Chicagoans, as it is just steps away from the metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or a dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And so we're back, and like we talked about, they have this proposed wild card system that they're talking about, and it seems like they want to get it straight for the next World Cup cycle, even though we're only in the semis of this current World Cup cycle. But they're looking to kind of, throw it out there to the fans. And I really think once this World Cup is over, you're going to see more details about how they want to do it. But first, we're going to go to TJ to tell us what he thinks about this system. And the real question is this what we need to expand going into the next Rugby World Cup cycle?
Okay, so I really appreciate you guys bringing me this on, because it's been a topic that's been obviously mulling around my brain while being at the World Cup, and I got to chat to former players, I got to chat to current players, see it firsthand.
Did you use your brain while you were over there drinking it up?
Moderately. The best conversations happen over a good beer, mate. So it's good stuff. Yeah, that's where all the great ideas come. But it's been interesting because obviously this has been thrown out before. Obviously, we want a more inclusiveness when it comes to the World Cup. We want more nations being promoted in the World Cup. But I think there's a strong consensus that the World Cup is already long enough. I think we already have enough teams. A lot of people are just saying that once we add another team, it does impact the potential, I guess, opportunities for the World Cup get created. But does the feel of the World Cup, the aura of the World Cup, does that get diminished because of more teams that come into it that may not necessarily make the cut in a consensus of, do they deserve to be there? If we add another team to the World Cup, that's another week teams have to remain overseas, more costs that smaller international teams have to pay for, another week where teams have to potentially bring players in to cover potential injuries due to another week of games and prep. Even though this was a really random injury, everybody saw the injury that happened to, I believe it was Namibia's captain, Johan Ratif, I think his name is, from the spider bite that he received. There are so many things that we have to consider when adding other teams into pool. A lot of people think it's just, let's throw 4 more teams in there, let's get more games. I think another week of games is just more blown out scorelines. So I think a lot of people are leaning on the fact that Portugal were an example of a lower base team because they were one of the last teams to qualify. They were able to take down a team like Fiji. Amazing brand of footy they played. They deserved that win, and you could see how much it meant to them when they went back to their home and they saw all the people that welcomed them in the airport. But in my opinion, it's about teams. It's what the public is looking for. We can't just add more teams to the World Cup setup just because people are wanting more teams. What we could do, though, in my opinion, is include them in a way that doesn't impact the schedule as much and still provides an opportunity for smaller or less developed international teams to be a part of the tournament. So I personally suggest a Division 2 World Cup competition. So they run in tandem with the World Cup, with the regular tournament. Say, for example, we get 8 teams who qualify for the Division 2 World Cup. They compete against each other for that Division 2 World Cup. They could play as curtain raisers for main matches, or even we're talking about Australia as the World Cup. They could play in smaller cities, more rural cities that wouldn't necessarily get an opportunity to be a World Cup city. And then it brings the fans to the host country. So smaller countries get to come in, they pay their ticket, they come over, they support their nation, brings in a bigger boost in their economy for the host nation, and just bigger promotion for the game. I think this model has worked previously really well in other competitions, just to name a few. So the WXV that's going on right now, they've obviously got their Div 1, 2, and 3 fixtures. My beloved New Zealand Bunnings NPC provincial competition, they also have their Heartland competition that runs at the same time. Smaller regions compete in that, and then we have their own tournament, but still runs in the same time frame as the competition that the Bunnings is doing. And also you see it in the Sevens. They have invitational tournaments running at the same time. Countless models with the same philosophy and structure. Why can't it work for the World Cup as well?
So I was going to say that WXV that's coming up real soon. It's almost the exact same model that you were kind of describing. And I'll wait for you to finish your drink of water there. So my question to you would be, if you had a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3, let's just use that as an example. Would you be in favor of relegation between the winners and the losers of those tiers?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think that's something that they're trying to introduce into the Rugby Championship. They're trying to introduce that into the Six Nations as well. It's definitely something where we want to get the old guard out. I'm not saying that old things don't work. There's still obviously structures that have been put in place back in the day that do hold their validity. But I think if we're looking at the aspect of the teams who perform the best or do the best deserve to be put in those opportunities, That's why everybody's calling for Fiji to join the Rugby Championship. That's why they want Georgia to be replaced by Italy in the Six Nations. It's things like that. So I definitely think relegation should also play a part in it. But then we'd have to figure out the one problem is how do we do that with the system that already has the qualifications in place at the moment. So I think that's where we got to find the middle ground, is figuring out how we work those two systems together, or whether we abolish one and we get one in.
I mean, if we went to a tiered system, I don't think we would have to necessarily start with relegation immediately. But I think what you do is you say, in the next 5 years, we're going to tone it in or the next 5 cycles, rather, not next 5 years, the next 5 cycles, we're going to start relegation. That way you've had 5 cycles of these tiered World Cups. You see how well they do. You see if curtain raisers work, if they don't work, fine tune all that stuff, and then decide whether or not you want to do relegation. But I think you make some great points. I do have some things I want to talk about, but first I'm going to give it to the Hammer, because usually what happens is I talk and the Hammer goes, well, Scott said everything I was going to say, and this is how I lost most of those challenges, when we were the MLR rant.
Are you done now?
The big guy's the championship.
Are you done?
He's the champion, and he has little trophies.
Hey, but I will say, being on shows that has happened, he has come up with some amazing points still. So I will say that. I'll give him that other side of it.
The Hammer validated right there. Thank you, Mr. Olsen. I appreciate it, sir. So I thought a lot about this since TJ brought it forward. Well, TJ brought the article forward, and we'll post the link here in the comments below. But I like the wild card idea. Yes, it does extend things, but only really actually for a week, because remember, with 5 teams in each pool, there's one team that always has a week off during pool play, right? If you add one team into pool play, you really now have 6 teams, and they can play for those 5 weeks, that round robin, and everybody's playing each week. Does it put more pressure on all the teams? Yes, it does. I think you compensate. I think they're allowed a 33-man roster, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. TJ, he should know, because he just came back from France, so he should know all things about the World Cup.
I'm pretty sure that's correct.
So you add 2 or 3 more players onto the roster to allow for that, knowing that some of those top, the tier 1 top tier teams are probably going to be playing that extra game. They can blood some younger players, bring a guy like, I remember when Jordy Barrett was called an apprentice. They brought him along. He didn't play, I don't think, any matches, but he got an opportunity to experience the touring life with an All Blacks. And you bring a couple of those younger guys with, and perhaps those teams will play those younger guys and give them an opportunity to get blooded early on. Doesn't diminish the jersey. It just, those guys are going to get there anyway. They're going to pull on the black shirt, for example. I don't think we have to worry about diminishing the jersey there. So then you have your second and third seeded teams in each pool that will see another team that's either seed number 2 or seed number 3 from one of the other pools. And it allows that first seeded team an opportunity to have a week off. Now, what's the value of this? I think there's a big value. It was a couple, actually. One, TJ touched upon just a little bit, injury. Antoine Dupont. I think when he got injured, and it was a major injury, they were not certain that he was going to come back and play again. The air was let out of the tournament. And I don't know if TJ being in France kind of picked up on that or noticed it, but from our perspective, even here in America, air was let out of the tournament. Like, damn, there's so many quality matchups. You want to see him against Faf, right? When he came back and was going to, reemerge, we all sat there and went, yes, and we pumped our fist. That additional week gives guys like that an opportunity to maybe recoup and recover and come back into their side. The other value, I think, in that situation is, we can allow these teams that were right on the cusp to perhaps get an opportunity to get back in. We saw what the United States was able to do against Portugal and against Georgia. Excuse me. And we really thought, as Americans watching this, going, damn, we should be there too. It gives them an opportunity to be competitive, to compete, to get experience, to blood some players, to get them an opportunity. I think there's a a real good opportunity with doing this. I don't think anything's lost. It only extends really. It would extend only by a week in my mind, because you have a bye week in that a bye week for the champions of each pool. The number one seed in each pool to have that week off. Oh, the other benefit. Remember, we were talking about a few weeks that South Africa actually threw the game against what is it, Ireland, right? They threw the game.
The conspiracies out here. Here we go.
I'm not saying I believe in it. I'm just saying that was the conspiracy, right? Well, if you have a week off, there's no benefit by throwing the game and being a 2 seed, right? You want to get the 1 seed to get that week of rest. So it would throw away that conspiracy and kind of take that off everybody's plate, if you will.
I gotcha. And real quick, I'm going to tell you, you talk about the conspiracy or the narrative, as they say. And in this Rugby Pass article about the wildcard system, former All Black James Parsons said, so teams like Scotland, they're probably worthy of a quarterfinal, but are likely to miss out. Samoa or Argentina or Japan potentially have a second lick at getting there. Whoever wins gets rewarded, which would also mean teams like Australia might get a second chance. And then you create a narrative that's interesting to fans. The last sentence of this quote, it's very American, I suppose, in terms of the wild card concept, but I think it's awesome. And I think to drive the fans and really convey to fans that there's going to be a narrative, more of a through line, besides just the top 2 guys in the pool getting in, is what's going to drive a change like this, right? And TJ briefly touched on, adding that third team to go in there to kind of get pumped by a lot of points. And I think that's the difference between because there's another concept of just adding overall 4 more teams to the playing pool. Right. Not just doing this wild card system, but overall bumping up the number of teams. I'm going to tell you guys, I do like the wild card concept, but if we've learned anything from the MLR, sometimes that extra week of rest doesn't work out the way you think it does. We have a lot of teams in the MLR that on those bye weeks and coming out of their divisions and winning their divisions, they've come into a home field match. And granted, the Rugby World Cup isn't going to be home field for those 1 seeds, but they're going to get that extra day's rest and kind of been slow and haven't been on their game. So what I'm going to propose to you guys is what I think should happen. It's outside the box thinking. It's definitely let's get hot type of shit. You guys might not agree with me, and there's probably a lot of people that won't agree with me. Most of the teams that are in the tier 1 nation status put in to host a Rugby World Cup, right? That's a premise we could probably say is true, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And usually they do multiple proposals, right? Because they might not get the 2027. So they put in for 2027 and 2031 and 35, right?
I'm pretty sure Australia did that. Yeah, they got 20. Yeah, they got
and USA did. USA put in for 27 and 31.
Knowing that they were shooting for 31. Yeah.
So instead of, you could do your wild card system, but what is the biggest issue we have right now in the Rugby World Cup is that gap between those tier 2 nations and those tier 1 nations in terms of playing. If you submit, this is going to be the rule that Rugby World Cup, and they're coming to me, they're asking the big guy. If you want to submit a proposal.
So now you're not just running for commissioner of.
No, I'm running for the president of World Rugby.
For
and I'm going to change it. It's going to be the rule book, not the book of law, just to make it American. I'm joking. But what we're going to do is if you want to do a proposal, you have to play at least 2 friendly matches with a tier team below you every year just to do a proposal. So, for example, if you want to put a proposal in for 2027, the next 4 years, you have to play at least 2, if you're Australia,
in the
2
cycle,
tier teams in the run-up cycle. Every year,
Australia would have to
play at least twice a year tier 2 level teams twice a year in their international cycles, however they would like to schedule it. If the United States is a tier 2 team, they have to play tier 3 teams to play.
Gotcha.
And what's happening is what we're seeing is the teams that you could definitely tell the teams that aren't playing in the high level competition. So how do you make those old boy teams or however TJ categorize them, the old guard teams, not necessarily share the wealth, because we're not talking about sharing players, but how do you get them to help those tiers below them to bring up a competition level that's going to be better for fans?
That only, and I love the idea. I'm not poo-pooing the idea. I think they would have to work out the finances, right? They would have to figure it out, because who's going to pay for the U.S. to go to Australia, or for Australia to come to the U.S.? Typically, the United States paid, buku dollars for the All Blacks to come here, for Ireland to come here, for, Australia to come here. I think it was
the only thing I'll say is that's because USAR is fucking stupid. And if you have a tier 1 team like New Zealand that's going to go play in a more developed country economically, like the United States, if the USAR isn't making money on that, they're just fucking stupid, in my opinion. So if you have Australia and they're going to go play in Canada, if Rugby Canada is not making money on that, that should be a sellout for that. Every rugby fan in Canada should be going to see Australia play Rugby Canada, men's or women's, right? That's just
I've got two things that I could probably, and I think it's a great point as well. And I think if they made that a mandatory requirement, that would be great for the tournament, because the one thing that I've always said is that it's not how we improve the Rugby World Cup is how we make the best out of these nations that are struggling to either promote themselves or develop as nations. It's how we add more regular fixtures to the international team's calendar. It's how we help promote these teams. Like I hate to always bring it back to an Australasian or a Pacific example, but it's my bread and butter, man. So I'm going to use it as my example. Yeah. But if you look at the Pacific Nations Cup, it's an amazing competition that includes Samoa, Fiji, Tonga, and then sometimes other teams into the competition. But they're always playing each other, and it's always that kind of brand of rugby. They don't really get to push each other in other international fixtures other than one-offs. But you saw the example of Fiji when they joined the Super Rugby and how much they've grown. They got Mick Byrne as their coach, who's one of the best coaches in rugby. They started to really push that, I guess, ceiling a little higher and higher. And now you can see Fiji have become one of those teams that go, we don't care if you see, we don't care if you say that we're an underdog. We're going to prove you wrong. And I think when you come to making money or getting people to come into the locations of where they're going to play, maybe do what the Pac-4 did with the women's. They had 4 teams come over to America, and we had not a tournament style, but like we had multiple games playing in maybe different cities or other things like that. Maybe have it in one country that works for a few different teams where we could get tier 2, tier 1, maybe even tier 3 getting into that mix. So that's my opinion, but I think that's really good as well, Scotty. That's a good idea.
And if you look at, let's just, you want to bring it, you always have your Asian view. I always have my American sports view. Look at college football, right? They still talk about Appalachia State being Michigan. And after that Appalachia State team beat Michigan, they went on and they played very well in their conference. North Dakota State was a cupcake team for a lot of teams in week 1, where they were going to like North Carolina, kind of get the brakes beaten off of them, but they played stiffer competition and then went back down to Division II. They were winning their national title there. You know what I mean? So it just, while it may not look good optic wise, the number one thing that every diehard rugby fan has talked about was how do you bring the competition level up from tier 2 and tier 3 by playing tier 1 teams more often. And that score line, that deficit will start to decrease, and those points will start, those point deficits will start to decrease eventually. But, I think World Rugby has to step in and mandate it. And I would say this, Rob, the unions that make the most money, for example, I took the college football example. Michigan paid Appalachia State $2 million to come in. Australia will pay for Samoa to come over and play that fucking game, if that's going to give them the Rugby World Cup in 2020.
If they can find money somewhere, I'm pretty sure they broke. But I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? But the point is, the payoff is having that Rugby World Cup in 2027.
Well, I think you'd probably find that World Rugby would have the finances to help develop these games, right? They would, because it would come from their development money. The component I like about this, and sorry, TJ, I just like this element better than the idea of relegation promotion in the Six Nations or, in some kind of, multi-layered tournament, is I'm not a fan of relegation promotion in this day and age. I don't think it's played very well for English rugby. I don't think it's played very well, or we haven't seen nearly the examples in English soccer. I mean, Wrexham is perhaps the the counterintuitive example, and that wouldn't have happened without two huge Hollywood stars with more social media savvy than God's got
and money.
Gifts.
You don't see those Saudi Arabian owners going in and buying championship level teams.
Right.
Well, when Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney they take all their funds out of everything else and put it into a soccer team. Yeah. It's going to do well.
It's going to do well. And so from my point is that it kind of is a way to tackle that and eliminate the relegation promotion and really create longer term partnerships with other companies. Like, why would a company invest and put their brand on the front of Team Italy if there's the threat that Team Italy will be demoted out of the Six Nations? Right. They're only going to do a one-off 1 year, partnership as opposed to something that's more stable, a 2 or 3 or 4 year partnership.
I would argue,
but watch when you have these teams that now have scheduled matches 4 years out because Australia needs to play a couple of these teams each year. Now that gives those partnerships a little bit higher profile opportunities for those lower tier teams, bringing in more investment.
The only thing I would counter to that is if you're going to have a union or a organization like the Six Nations do relegation, they have to put in the same amount of production into the second tier team matches as they would in the first tier team matches, and that's the issue. Can you do that? Can they sustain that? Because my point is they can get way more sponsors to sponsor everybody throughout the up and down, and if there's 2 sections of it, right? If there's 6 in the front and 6 in the back, and that way you can say to the person that wants to sponsor Italy, you could say, regardless, you're still going to get the same amount of viewers because we have this relationship with Peacock and have this relationship with Rugby Pass.
So long as the whomever's going to be televising it is going to commit to televising both tiers of the tournament.
But I think uniquely, rugby has been one of the sports that has utilized these streaming services very creatively. So I think we do have people in those organizations that understand how to do that. So I think for our sport of rugby, we have more of a chance to do that. So before we go, I'm going to give you guys a little question. I'll start with TJ and then we'll roll over to Hammer and then I'll give mine. So you have to pick one change. You either get to add this wild card system in, or you get to add another pool. So you're adding 4 more teams into the mix, or you get to keep it the original set of teams and the wild card system. The question is, you have to pick one of those that you feel would make more rugby fans.
And when you say another pool, that would include this total tournament. It wouldn't be how I was talking about it with the layered tournament.
No. We just this tournament format.
Another pool of 5 is what you're saying.
So you would add 4 more. You would add 4 more teams. So for example, the 4 teams that would have been added in this World Cup would have been USA, Spain, Canada, and Hong Kong. Right. So you have to decide. You're deciding what's going to get you more fans: this wild card system or adding another pool, and why? TJ, you're up.
I mean, if it speaks to more fans, I think the numbers don't lie. But when you look at it from a viewership standpoint and entertainment standpoint, adding an entire pool, I think that's too much. I think we're pushing on the boundaries of trying to get too much from the fans, and then people just going, no, I don't want to deal with this type of matchup being in the Rugby World Cup because it could be another blowout on the thing. So I think, even though it contradicts my whole narrative, because I think that I do believe there should be some change. If those are the 3 options, I'm going with the wild card because I don't dislike the wild card option. I just think that a layered approach works better with developing rugby and also with viewership. But like James Parsons, I'm the same. I like the idea. It's just not my number one choice.
I got you. Hammer, what do you think? What's your choice here?
Well, first of all, I don't think one or the other is going to have any more impact than the other one. I just don't believe it's going to have any more impact than the other one in terms of bringing fans in. As a matter of fact, I think adding another pool is going to make it less exciting for those fans that are committed. I mean, look at some of the matchups we watched with bated breath. The Wales-Fiji matchup. We knew that was going to be an important matchup because, that had three really, really good teams in it that we knew any one of the three, or one of them is going to get bounced. One of them is out. Right. So it's going to be a big deal. Same thing could be said for Ireland, Scotland. That matchup, I think in the fourth week of pool play or third week of pool play, whenever that was a meaningful match because we knew it really, there was an outcome potentially in which it could see the exit of South Africa or Ireland, depending on the result. Not a very big one. So I myself would go with the wild card because truth be told, your teams that are in the mix that are, your team, I guess this year would have been like a Scotland will get its opportunity. It was Wales, Argentina, right? Was in that one. Yep. Who was third in that pool? Wales and TJ
Wales, Argentina. It was Australia, wasn't it?
Australia. Yes. Australia would see themselves playing there. And then you would see some other teams play in there too that might not normally get a chance. Like you'd like to see a Georgia get in there, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to draw some interest. I just don't think there's going to be much of a difference between the two in terms of drawing more fans. Here's what I do think they definitely need to do in their times. There are things that they've talked about doing this, so they're going to do it. They can't make the World Cup draw 3 years before the tournament, right? I mean, what a mistake that was. They should do it a year before, or maybe they somehow, because they're talking about doing the wild card draw the next time around, perhaps redraw based upon seeds when they get to that, after the wild card matches, redraw those spots and based upon the result.
Especially if you saw the lead up to this World Cup cycle with France, right? We talked about 3 or 4 years ago how they were kind of tanking the Six Nations on purpose by cutting all their seasoned players and blooding all their young guys who they felt were going to make this team. And what happens? France started to become a powerhouse. So how is it fair to them coming off of the World Cup cycle in 2019 to have teams that, while they're playing their international window, might not? I don't think they didn't play to win, but my point is their strategy was to bleed the guys and get them enough experience and enough caps to try and be successful in this World Cup. So if you're picking the draw that early, you're kind of discounting what teams are trying to do to make a better product, and I don't like that.
Well, I think even look at it from another standpoint is look at Tonga when they played New Zealand. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. That was a completely different side, and they had to pull guys up from club rugby, not professional, not Bunnings NPC, not anything. They had to play club rugby guys, and they got belted, I think, like 80-0 or 90-0 or something like that. Come this year, they've got a team with Israel Folau, Fekitoa, all those guys. I definitely think the pools need to get drawn very closely to the World Cup. Not like the day before, but it's got to be a lot closer than 3 years.
Yeah.
Yep, I hear you. So
and look at let's go back to the Rugby Rant several weeks ago, and Scott wasn't on it, but Ty and I were talking about the pools who we thought was going to come out of each pool. I didn't think Wales would come out. I picked Australia.
Neither did I.
Yet there were folks that discounted Fiji, and I looked at the result that just happened against England, and I said to myself, that Fijian team is a different team in the areas where they need to be in 15s, right? In the set piece, they had a much stronger set piece against England. They proven they could compete against a team that had a quality set piece. And I'm like, that for me was a huge difference in Fiji's success in the World Cup this year. So, drawing a little bit closer gives us a little bit more meaningful. The pools are a little bit more evened out. So
I'm going to do what the big guy always does. I'm going to say you could do both. The reason I'm saying that is you start exactly. You start the extra pool, the extra round, right? And you build that narrative, because what's going to bring in the most viewers now of actual rugby fans is narrative. So you want to start the building block. The building block isn't bringing new rugby fans in right now. In my opinion, the format we currently have is stale for current rugby fans. So create that extra layer, create that narrative where your Wallabies might be having a second chance to come in, right? Play that, get them more involved, get all those teams more involved, and then after 2 cycles of that, then expand to that extra group play and figure out the schedule from there. And I think that's how you'll start to grow the game outside of what you already have. You know, obviously a lot of USA fans were watching the World Cup and are going to watch the World Cup regardless if the Eagles in it. Same thing with Rugby Canada fans. But how do we draw those new fans into the Rugby World Cup? That's if our team is in there. You know what I mean? If you have something to really root for. But so real quick, I think we had a really good opportunity to talk about this. I'm going to say the one thing I was disappointed was that DuPont didn't have that Rip Hamilton plastic mask like the whole.
Me too.
He should have just went full Rip, fucking just the face, the Jacques Plante old goalie mask, or the Cheevers with the fucking stitches. You know, if you guys ever saw that, Rob's going to put a picture of that.
I got to ask, what he had a orbital fracture like on his cheek, right? Yeah. What good did the scrum cap do?
Yeah, that's what I was confused about as well. We were sitting and watching it at home. We sat there and go, okay, he's got a scrum cap on, but that's protecting his.
The only thing I think.
My thought was that it's gamesmanship by France, because if you recall, South Africa the week before kind of said, said we're going to put a target on him. We're going to go after him. We're not going to play him any different, right? Which is fine. They're playing gamesmanship. We know Jacques Nybar and everybody else does a bit of that. But I think France came back and did the same thing. Like by putting him a scrum cap, he's more noticeable. Now, when you see that scrum cap as an official, you're looking and saying, oh, that's Antoine DuPont, right? Mm-hmm. And so
what's going on with those hits?
It would draw eyes on him, and therefore the official would have a little bit more keen observation about what happens around, the tackle area.
I also wonder, and this is out of the box thinking again, because I'm the big guy. You're playing a rugby match.
It's a big box.
Tired. Yeah, it's a huge box. Expensive, nose tackle, Tony Saragusa style box. But you're playing rugby, you're getting tired, and one thing you do is you open your mouth a lot to breathe, right? I'm wondering, because any type of movement with your jaw is going to hurt your orbital at that point. What if the scrum cap was just strapped so tight that it was keeping his jaw at a reasonable tolerance for him to not feel as much pain moving? That's the only thing. That's the only thing I could think of. It wasn't necessarily protection, as maybe it was just trying to minimize that pain he's feeling because he's going to be. And then now
perhaps remind him to close his jaw. Maybe I don't
that's
know.
What I'm saying. To keep it tight enough. Anyway, guys, this was a great episode.
Hold on, I got to interject this, Scott, real quick. There's a lot of stuff going on right now behind the scenes, folks. So pay attention to the Rugby Rant, because we're going to try to dig into this if we can. And I know TJ at the Bonus Point always is bringing new, fresh stuff into his pod. So you got to check out the Bonus Point podcast too. He does a great work, covers a lot of that, a lot of stuff over in the Pacific, especially with Drua coming along and really making a difference, to bring up, the Pacific Islanders into World Rugby. But we're going to try to get somebody from the U.S. Rugby Players Association involved. We know that there's been some movement in the last week with regard to that. So we're going to bring that on. We're going to have some Hounds talk. There's going to be a interview released, I think, with Chicago Hounds, James English, Dave Clancy, talking a little bit about what Chicago Hounds have in store as we head into late fall. And then, of course, I think Van Gollingsworth from the new CEO of NOLA Gold is going to be talking to us about what they've got going
Monday,
down there.
Baby.
So that's coming out next Monday. So we got a lot of stuff happening. Pay attention. Check back in with us. Just because rugby's starting to wind down in the World Cup and not so much is happening with the MLR, we're still active. We're still pushing, and we're still trying to bring you the best product we can, because you know what our motto is. We're trying to grow rugby one fan at a time. So we're going to keep after it for all you guys out there.
Nice. Absolutely. So again, thanks TJ for coming on. Really appreciate it. I know you're tired. You got work, you time zones. It's fucking crazy. Although it's fucking
all the
late there,
wine's got to get out of his liver and his system.
It's 6 o'clock in LA where he's at, so I don't know what the fuck he's really complaining about.
I'm going to the gym after this, so it's going to be a good session. Yeah,
exactly. He's going, and then you got Monday Night Football, the whole 9 yards. Anyway, guys, thank you so much on behalf of myself, Rob Hammerschmidt, our buddy Ty, who couldn't be here tonight, and TJ, the host of the Bonus Point podcast. We'll see you all next week, baby. Love it.